Welcome to Drinks with a VC, where we explore the humanity behind investments. Grab your favorite drink and join us as we laugh, learn, and liquor up with some of our favorite venture capitalists.
Whether you're a startup founder, fellow VC, LP, or just curious about the investor ecosystem, you've found the right podcast. Please like and subscribe.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Drinks with a VC. Thanks for joining us via whichever platform you're using to watch or listen in. I'm Vik co-founder and co-GP of Green Cow Venture Capital. And as always, I'm joined by my close friend and hostess with the mostest, Bree Hansen, who leads up West Coast biz dev for a little law firm called Cooley. Hey, Bree.
Hello. Good to see you, Vik.
Good to see you. Today's episode is brought to you by Fidelity Private Shares. Fidelity is committed to supporting startups at all stages. Using the Fidelity Private Shares platform, founders can automate their equity management operations and financings in a single collaborative hub. To learn more about how Fidelity can help your company grow, please check out the episode description below. Bree, I know we have a guest to introduce, but today I wanted to congratulate you, a very belated congratulations from myself and our audience for your new role at Cooley. Congrats.
Thank you. We have been very busy over at Cooley. I've had the opportunity to go to the Upfront Summit, South by Southwest, Pair Demo Day. It's been a lot of fun. I'm working with a lot of great people, some of the best attorneys that I've ever met. And so it's been a really fun ride.
Yeah, shout out, by the way, to Rachel Profit and to Sasha Ross, two close friends and amazing attorneys at Cooley. If you are in need of startup advice, or VCs, if you're out there, you're in need of legal counsel, please consider using Cooley and definitely reach out to Bree. She can hook you up. We were talking earlier, Bree, about how in April coming up, you've got an in-person event every day of the month. And today is no exception. Heading into April now, you've got March Madness, and you're going to be running off to the match. I say match because I watch way too much European football. You're gonna be off to the game at the Chase Center watching Florida and Maryland. Is that right?
And Texas Tech and Arkansas. So I've got March Madness tonight. I'll be missing my Cougars over in New Jersey, which is more in the area of where our guest is coming from. But yeah, I was BYU alumni, so they'll be playing the Crimson Tide tonight. And I have a feeling the Colt of Alabama will beat the Colt of BYU, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. And we'll try and put our next guest on the spot, and we'll get his bracket predictions, and we'll give us ours. And, maybe kind of look back at this in a few hours and say, gosh, we had it all wrong, but great, fine. That's okay. As VCs, we're used to that. Listen, I'm really excited to be back. We've had a few-month hiatus here. And now when we started conducting our due diligence on our next guest, I got even more excited and couldn't wait to dig in. Let me start with a pared down version of his introduction. Does that sound good to you, Bree?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Today's VC was born in Tel Aviv and raised in New York City, two of the most amazing cities in the world. After receiving his undergraduate degree from Johns Hopkins and his MBA from University of Chicago, he turned to consulting at Booz & Co. for 4 years before throwing his hat into the serial entrepreneur ring. After founding two startups, he leapt to the other side of the table as an angel investor, a family office director, and now currently a VC and SPV syndicate sponsor investor. He's made 70 plus investments across vehicles, including most recently Cherry, Ko-Fi, Tridos. I'm going to butcher some of these, Prodea, Snapped, Nest Egg, and many others. He's a frequent participant at events as a speaker, moderator, and panelist across the globe. He's written 60 plus articles that have been published in everything from Fortune and Forbes and Alley Watch to PropMoto and Architect Magazine and the 74 Million. He's an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at SciSim School of Business. Please welcome the pride of Frisch High School in New Jersey, director of Reach Labs, Andrew Ackerman. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
Cheers to you. What are we drinking today?
We are drinking Lefroy 10 years. I drink it neat because I'm an animal. It's super smoky. I'll hold
Yep.
it up to the camera, and like some of your listeners will get hair on their chest.
Yes. I've grown a beard and a mustache in that time of just smelling it just now. So it's perfect. It's funny, we don't normally drink this early, but it's March Madness. Bree had stuff to do. You're a busy man. I'm slammed. So I'm glad that we're getting this out at 2 o'clock ahead of the matches here. 2 o'clock Central, I should say. Do you have any predictions for tonight's matchups? I'm gonna refer to them again, and I just want you to give us who you predict is going to win. And Bree, I want you to also chime in here. Duke versus Arizona.
One of them will win. Hold on, let me preface this, right?
Yes.
My wife's Canadian. I got 3 teenage daughters. They all watch more sports than me.
Yes.
My daughter
Yes.
solely in the other room has her brackets. I don't even know. I can go grab her and I'll bring her in.
You know what? We actually don't mind that, but no, let's keep it simple. Why don't you give us, without knowing, just your blind predictions? Duke. I'm going to go ahead and take Duke. Cooper Flagg is a beast, and I think it's going to be his ride off into the sunset moment before he gets to the NBA. Bree, who do you have?
I'm in the same boat as Andrew. I'm blinding this one. I'm going to go
Okay.
Duke.
Okay. BYU versus Alabama. Bree.
Alabama. Oh, sorry.
Alabama.
Oh, no,
That's
it's okay.
okay. I even went to BYU, and I'll call Alabama.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think it's going to be a runaway victory for them as well. Alabama. Florida versus Maryland. I was in Florida last week with Laura's family for spring break. I got the shirt from Florida, so I'm wearing it. So I might as well say Florida. Andrew?
I'll go with Maryland. Why not?
All right. Crab cakes. Amazing over there. Bree?
My parents live in Florida, so Florida it is.
Okay. Finally, Texas Tech versus Arkansas.
Arkansas. Come on.
Arkansas.
Razorbacks are like that's a way cooler nickname for a team in any city than anyone else.
I get it.
Different. I'm still going to go with Arizona.
Different strokes for different folks, but I get it. Bree, who are you rolling with?
A little fun fact about me, many of our audience may not know, is I have a second podcast, which is a true crime podcast that covers cold cases in Texas. So I'm going to go with Texas Tech on this one because I'm much more familiar with Texas.
Yeah. Okay. All right. There you have it. Those are our predictions. We'll check back in a few hours to see if we're right. If we're right, we'll keep it in. If we're wrong, we're going to totally remove it. Yeah. We'll edit it in post. Excellent. Listen, Andrew, thank you for joining us tonight. As we do with most of our guests, we like to kind of get a sense of the origin story. And I mentioned that you were born in Tel Aviv and then your family immigrated to New York. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your childhood was like, the relationship that you have with your parents, and if you have siblings, et cetera?
For sure. So I hate to disappoint you. Both my parents were Americans. We were there because my dad was studying in med school. They were thinking about emigrating. But, a couple of years of actually seeing socialized medicine up close and personal, that's enough to make anyone change their mind. So it's more like they spoke English to me. That's when I was 2. So this is why we have no accent. But I really didn't learn Hebrew that much in the 2 years. So here I am. I got my passport. I had the devil's own time convincing the Israeli army that they didn't want me. No, hold on. This is how I convinced them. The word in Hebrew for to shoot is lirot, and the Hebrew word for to look at or to see is lirot. So if you don't want someone in a combat situation who's not quite clear on the difference. Yeah, it took me weeks to arrange that. So yeah, we moved back to the States when I was 2.5.
Okay. All right. And, you're not great with Hebrew, but you are somewhat of a linguist. You speak 5 different languages? Is that right?
So yeah. I do actually speak Hebrew very well now.
Okay.
I learned it the hard way, like picking up girls in bars. So that's, if you're motivated, you will learn anything.
Yes.
I tried to learn French in high school. My teacher was Belgian, so I have a shitty accent, and I can say shitty. Is that all right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I can't really remember half the words. And you know how it is if you ever go to France, unless it's perfect, they're going to pretend they have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah.
I did pick up a decent amount of Spanglish along the way. Like for short conversations, I'm very convincing. And I did actually try to learn Japanese when I was in business school because it was the 90s and we thought they were going to own us. So I can very convincingly ask people where the bathroom is and say, scotchu no masho yo, means let's go and drink some scotch. but I'm a little limited beyond those areas. And I think the fifth one, if we're counting, is probably JavaScript.
Fair enough.
Should we have him open gift 3, Vic, since we went into the languages?
I love it. Yeah, why not? I think this is flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but
Okay, here we
I'm
go.
cool with it.
Amazon Prime. It's like unboxing day. It's
Yep.
like a DVD.
That's what we call it. VC unboxing.
I'm gonna go with a book of some sort.
You got it.
Let me see.
The survey
By the
says
way,
you're right.
There's one book that if you have this book in here, you've bugged me. There's one book that I really wish I'd written. Like when I found out about it, I'm like, I hate the world that I didn't write this. And you're gonna get it soon. You ever hear of the book called Go the Fuck to Sleep?
Yes, I have. And you're an author now, so maybe you can write the next version of it, but this is similar.
But good enough. Dirty Japanese, everyday slang from what's up to fuck off. Awesome.
We couldn't have timed that better if we tried. We really couldn't.
Great. Awesome.
Brilliant.
And you have it transliterated great because I can't read the Hatagano, the Hiragana.
I'm thinking the sequel that you can write, Andrew, is Stay the Fuck Asleep. Why not? Why not?
Okay, we'll see. We'll see.
You're talking about the need to learn Hebrew in order to pick up women. How did you meet your wife?
I crashed her birthday party.
You crashed her birthday party. When was this?
I can't tell you the year. She'll kill me.
Okay. Did it occur in high school, in college?
No. So if I had been with anyone had been with me the way I was in high school, or even in my 20s, like that would have been grossly unfair. I mean, it was a total moving target.
Sure.
Here, I can say this. I was just about, I guess, plus or minus 30 when we met.
Okay.
Yeah. So in New York, my wife had moved to New York, I think a year or two prior to that. She's from Toronto.
Wow.
And it just so happened that I was out seeing a movie with a buddy of mine, and he's like, I want to go to my friend's birthday party after this. And he said, what's with your friend? It was a joint birthday party. Oh, it's my friend Naftali. And I'm thinking, it's like a dorky Jewish guy. It'll be bad beer and like people wear bad shoes. I'm Jewish too, but at least I got good shoes. So I'm like, oh, fine, we'll go after. So I haven't shaved. I was wearing glasses rather than my contacts. And I walk in there, and it turns out Naftali is like this 6'4", like impeccably dressed architect. And it's all his buddies. And then like everyone else is my wife. At the time, she's getting a second degree at FIT. So it's like all these like fashionistas in their 20s. I turn to my buddy Ben. I'm like, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
We got to get everyone in here. We have to get somewhere dark. We have to get them drunk, and then we'll see.
That's awesome.
Hilarious. So is she still in fashion?
No. She was in fashion for many years. Then, we had our first child. She went back, and we had our second 2 children, they're twins. And at that point, she went back and said, I don't want to do this. And we had a good friend who was a real estate agent. Yeah. The guy who actually helped me buy this apartment. I'm at my home office today. And at one point, when I bought this, I said, hey, Steve, like, I got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I'm never moving again. Our professional relationship is over. The good news is, you want to come Friday night dinner? So we've been friends with Steve ever since. And at one point, like they're sitting around the table and they're talking, like Julie has the idea. And she's like, no, you'd probably make a really good real estate agent. Like you have a good eye and a good sense for this. So later she said, should I try it? And I said, you're going to go back to work after the twins. So go back, try to be a real estate agent. If it doesn't work, you spent a year at it, just forget about it and claim you came back to work a year later and you go back into fashion. Yeah. So she came back. She loved it. She was able to make a go of it. And she's been doing it ever since.
I love that. And I know we want to get into real estate a little bit later in the show, but let's go back a little bit to when you met your wife. What attracted you to her? What made her interesting to you?
It's going to sound corny, but her smile. Like she's got a fantastic, just one of the prettiest faces ever. And it was like holding, she like laughed at a lot of things. And she saw the good in people. After 21 years of marriage, okay, we've changed that. But at the time, No, that was mainly it.
That is very sweet, though. I love that. You have 3 kiddos. They're not really quite kiddos anymore, I suppose. Mm-hmm. One of them is just entered University of Michigan. Is that right?
Yep.
And then you've got 2 twins that are younger. How old are they?
They're 16.
They're 16. 3 teenage girls You have all of your hair. You haven't grayed out. I think you are reverse aging. We were talking a little bit about health
I have
routine.
nothing against day drinking.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. If anyone's a big proponent of day drinking, which we approve of here at Drinks with a VC, it's Andrew. I was talking to a friend today. This is completely off script. I was talking to a friend, and actually, Bree, I think it was you.
Oh, sweet.
Go
Yeah.
figure. This is what happens when you have one scotch before the episode. Bree and I were talking about raising kids and how there seems to be a dependency nowadays on screens in order to kind of be the third parent of sorts. And we're all of a generation, you're my sister's age, I believe, Andrew. And, we're all sort of in this kind of spectrum of ages in which we remember what it's like to use a rotary phone and then to kind of go and be proficient with your iPhone or your Pixel, Android, etc., and what a peculiar place it is to be in there. And I didn't grow up with my phone. I didn't, my first cell phone that I had was senior year of college. And the kind of damage that we're doing by kind of creating this dependency on screens and with kids is not something that we subscribed to way back when. What was your take on parenting for these three teenage daughters of yours? Were they allowed screen time, or was it sort of a perk that they got?
You'll ask any parent, you get one data point, and the problem is you don't know for another 30 years whether or not that's a good outcome or a bad outcome.
Yeah.
Take everything I'm going to say with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
We try to hold the line on it. We fail miserably most of the time.
Yeah.
We have all the tracking software on their phones, and my daughter's still on her phone at 12:30 at night. And I'm like, oh, mom can see that. Every morning she checks it. Where do you think you're going to get away with something on this?
Yeah.
And she's 16, she still does it. I mean, so there's an element of addiction to it, but it's a behavioral addiction. All these studies you see about increases endorphins, that's on the order of magnitude of a slice of pizza. I don't think there's a physical basis to it.
Yeah.
And I'm also not a hater when it comes to it. So I feel like everything that's new, we fear because we can see what we think is how shit can go off the rails.
Yeah.
We undervalue like the positives. Our kids are never bored.
Yeah.
Now maybe that's bad because a little bit of boredom kind of gets the creativity going.
Yeah.
But there's a certain, like, to them, picking up the phone and asking ChatGPT to restate the way their textbook has it in a way that they can understand it is second nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's something to being digitally native that us as digital immigrants won't ever quite get. I mean, I will, because I identify as 29.
Yeah.
But you guys are fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I go back to this sense of hysteria. There was a documentary that we watched. My wife made us watch it. It scares her. And this guy's like, oh, the screen time is these horrible things. And he's like, nobody ever said the bicycle was going to ruin society. It's totally different.
Yeah.
And then I watched an article in the New York Times, like the bicycles as we know it first came out and women were riding it. And they said, women can't ride bicycles. It's going to ruin humanity as we know it.
Oh, yeah. Every new technology.
Not the exact words, but they were that worried that the women riding bicycles would have like physiological problems, and then like society was going to break down. So everything new scares us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to stick with the ed tech part, because in 2015, you were the managing director of Dream It Ventures Ed Tech Accelerator. And I'm curious to kind of get your perspective on how you've seen that space evolve into what it is today. And did it meet your expectations? Did it kind of underwhelm? Do you feel like there's something deeper?
So let's put it in context. So I'll tell you, before Dream It, I'd been doing some angel investing. And then when I first started at Dream It, we were generalists. So I'd done maybe 5 angel investments prior, did about 22 or 23 generalist investments. And then for a whole variety of reasons, we started to get a new model. We went later stage and went vertically focused. And, so I built up the EdTech program, but we haven't done that. I haven't done EdTech actively since 2017.
Yeah.
I may be a little behind the times, but I'll tell you the thing that I didn't know going into EdTech. It's really a small market at the end of
Mm.
it. And the thing that, here, let's make it a little more general, because I did 2 startup sessions earlier today with different accelerator programs. And every time I'm on it, like I have to, okay, I see that Tam Sam Sam. That's very cute. Don't ever do that again. Like if I can find the person who came up with that, I would slap them. Like
Yeah.
that is a poor woman is single-handedly responsible for confusing more people in this country, in our sector, than anyone I know. I want one number. Just tell me what your market size is. So it's got to be bottoms up. And
Yeah.
bottoms up
Right.
means very simply A times B equals C. So how many customers are there? How much do you charge? And that's your total. It's really that simple conceptually. So
There
if
you
you
go.
look at ed tech, let's say you're doing higher ed. There's something like 4 to 5 million students, depending on how you count graduate school or not. And
Yeah.
if you're doing something, you're charging like $10 per student a semester for some kind of, advanced course plugin. Now you can do the math on that one. That's 50 million.
Yeah.
That's way too small to be a market. So a lot of the things I went into, wow, this is really cool. It's great for society. I wish my kids would use it. Much of that is investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it means
Yeah.
that the exits are different. And people who do it are, they're really good at either picking very cash efficient startups that those kind of exits work for them, for their fund, or they're able to be very selective of those relatively few tech ideas that actually can become like real unicorns. It was gratifying to see. I was already out at this point when COVID hit. Like all of a sudden, EdTech had its moment. First time in the history of EdTech. EdTech founders were getting like money thrown at them, and like exits were flush. One of my companies exited at that point. Things have not been as good to the acquiring company since. In fact, their earnout just ended yesterday, so they're pretty happy. They're probably drinking right now too.
They're probably drinking as well.
They're probably doing exactly what we're doing.
Cheers to them. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, not to mention it's very hard to sell ed techs like into schools. So like your buyer has a lot of friction. It's a long sales cycle. They don't have big budgets. It can be a little bit, unfortunately. And we all wish, I think, that ed tech could be a little bit more sexy and get some really great technology into the hands of students. But I was fortunate to grow up in California where Steve Jobs were just giving us computer labs when I was growing up. So I got to learn on a Mac when I was 8 or 9. And that was ed tech.
That was that tech.
Yeah. For me, it was the logo on an Apple II Plus.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Which was a step up off of the TRS-80s.
Yes. No, absolutely. My dad, and I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before, but my dad got the first one of the first Apple II computers to come off the line. And we sat down, and the first thing he did was take it apart. And he took it apart in front of me, and then we put it back together. And
you could do that back then. You could add your own memory, you could add your own motherboards.
Yeah, absolutely. And he would sit there. I would sit there actually with Mac Paint open and draw a rocket and then just use a scroll bar. And my mom thought I was the smartest kid on the planet. I could take, sorry, Mom, I really wasn't that smart, but I really impressed her. I impressed myself to the point where I thought maybe I'd be a computer scientist and engineer at some point in time. I failed in that regard. But those were my earliest memories, the Apple IIc with my dad in the garage. Speaking of childhood memories, we didn't have, these crazy video games to entertain ourselves. There was one game that I know that you've become a collector of in a way. And I think we have a gift as part of our VC unboxing that we should probably just get to right off the bat.
Yeah, let's do it. I was thinking the same thing.
This rattling was all about?
Yeah, that's the rattling.
I think so. I think so.
It could be like, pieces like a Monopoly board or something.
We like to weave all of these things together. Sometimes our transitions are crappy like that last one. But while you're opening that box, I just want to point out to people, I wish we could timestamp it as we were doing this, but to all of the founders that I've ever worked with at WashU, at SLU, that I've ever been a guest lecturer in your courses, please refer to this episode and to the time in which Andrew said, I wish we could have slapped the guy that came up with Tam, Sam, and Sam. Please refer to that one. All right, what do we got here in this box?
What do we got?
Andrew?
What do we got? Tiddlywinks.
Tiddlywinks.
I'm not that old. Wow, look at this. Like, hold on, I gotta. See, you see this, right? This is like vintage 1950s.
You
Oh.
said you were a collector of vintage Tiddlywinks. I wasn't sure if it was a joke or not, but I went
Oh,
for
it's totally a joke, but now I am.
I love it. I love it. I think this is going to be a running.
I don't think I've ever even seen Tiddlywinks in person.
What's great about this is you can show your kids, like, this is what we did when we didn't have cell phones.
That's right.
I remember these. These are like the, okay, for those of you in the audience who I can't really get a sense of it, I'm looking at something about the size of a dime, maybe between a dime and a nickel.
Yep.
They're plastic. You can hear that. So I do remember we used to take them and you would hold them, like one would be flat and you put the other one, you make the other one jump. Is that
Yeah.
The other one jump. That's right.
Like
That's right.
Pogs.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to watch me lose the piece within 5 minutes of opening it.
They were like Pogs, though. That's right.
Yeah, you played it like Pogs.
Yeah, and that explains what maybe this is for. It's like Target-like thing.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, and the rules. Oh, wow, I could actually read. Who wants to read the rules?
Look, I do think maybe this would have been a pandemic treat for the family, but now you should just kind of gather the girls together, get your wife around a table, and play Tiddlywinks.
You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah,
yes,
we love funny stories.
My parents, my mom now, my dad passed a year ago. They have a place out in Long Beach. For those of you who don't know the East Coast, that's on Long Island. And in the basement, I'm going through that basement, and I come across lawn darts. Remember lawn darts?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Lawn darts were perhaps the dumbest idea for a children's toy ever. But they're darts about this big, made of like hard plastic. Yeah. And they're like, it's kind of the cross section is like an X, but it's like a long line. They come in cheerful yellow, red, and I think there was blue. And at the end, they come to a point. It's a little blunt, but it's weighted. And the idea was you put this like hula hoop on the grass, and you would throw the darts up in the air, and you would try to get them to come down into that, into that hoop because they were weighted and they would stick into the lawn, like lawn darts. But what they didn't realize is all these kids throwing straight up in the air. They were basically throwing arrows up in the air, came down and went down and killed them. Like people died from long darts. And I'm like, Mom, you have lawn darts. I thought the kids would play with it. I'm like, no, those are recalled.
That feels overtly dangerous.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think maybe stick to Tiddlywinks.
Archery catches what lawn darts were.
See, what I think the listeners and the viewers need to understand, and some of the faithful that have been on this journey from episode 1 to now will understand, we send out a questionnaire to all of our guests ahead of time. And most of our guests take us very seriously and fill out to the T very specific details about their lives so that it just aids Bree and I in our due diligence of our guest. Andrew, however, has clearly tried to deceive us. And I fear that future guests, I feel like future guests, Andrew must have been day drinking, but I feel like future guests are going to look at this episode and say, you know what? Maybe we should think of the most extravagant, random thing that Bree and Vik can go track down and give as presents to us. Just to
go
top
back. I honestly don't remember saying Tiddlywinks, but it might have been like a throwaway line. I had to go check that out.
There are no throwaway lines here, folks.
You also can do some quarter trick with your arm. Maybe you can put the Tiddlywinks on your arm and try the same trick.
Totally by chance, my daughter's change drawer is still here.
Is that a roll of quarters, or are you just?
Well, it's a mixed bag, right? It's a mixed bag. It's a little harder with different shapes, so I'm going to drop it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. Andrew also mentioned in his question.
We can do it later if you want.
No, you can prepare yourself. But Andrew did mention that he was gifted in a very specific way, that he could put quarters on his elbow and bounce them and then snap his arm fast enough where he could catch those quarters. And he claims that he hasn't practiced these things, which I'm not here to judge. If you've sat in front of a mirror and done this with quarters for a while, Andrew, that's fine too. But I tend to believe you and take people at their face value. So I am interested to see if you can do this.
Okay, so this is kind of a mixed stack of like quarters and nickels. Let me see if I can put the nickels on top for,
Okay.
for aerodynamics and stability.
Yes, yeah, the physics of it all.
We want all the work here. Okay, sitting down, let's see.
To our audience, Andrew has balanced. How many coins do you say you have on your
Well, I
elbow?
had 10, now I have 5.
You have 5. Let's go with 5. Let's go with 5.
Okay, hold on. I just dropped. It might have been the first drink we had. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. So he's balancing 5 coins, maybe 10 on his elbow.
Oh, there
Oh
you go.
my!
Wow.
That's
Wasn't
it.
that like
And I have no idea how I found out that I could do that. But
isn't
I've
that
done
like
it with
on
30 or
Squid
40 of them.
Games?
That's incredible.
That was
might have
really
been.
cool.
First of all, I think you would be very good at lawn darts. I'm sure you're going to be very good at Tiddlywinks now. But Andrew has really astounded us with this kind of like feat of human, I don't know, not just quickness, like cat-like reflexes.
I've still tried to, like, I can't get this to work in a bar where I can win a drink out of it. So it's really not a useful skill.
Gosh, honestly, I feel like there's a way of doing that. I
Yeah.
feel
When
like
did you
there's a way of doing
discover
that.
you had
Let's work
this
on that
gift?
later. We have to figure out where I can actually monetize that skill.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of monetizing, you've got a book that comes out in June, and I'm really excited to dig into it when it does come out, because I have seen a number of the chapters and the descriptions of the chapters. Let me go through a couple because I think it's pretty cool. Here we go. Tell Me Where It Hurts, chapter 4. I'm pretty sure it's a conversation about pain points and customer discovery.
Yep.
Okay, lovely. There's another one, Go to Market or Go Home. Show Me the Money Financials. I'm really excited about this book because it's not written as a textbook business style book. It's got this fictional first-time entrepreneur kind of perspective that you're bringing to it. I'm really excited to kind of just learn from you. Like, what was the aha moment that said, hey, Andrew, you sit down and write a book? Number one. Number two, how did you come up with, hey, I'm gonna write it from this perspective?
Okay, number 1 was day drinking. Number 2 was day drinking. No. Okay, no, I'll give you a semi-serious answer on this one. Back in the dawn of time, I went to business school, Chicago Booth, before it was called Booth. So now you roughly know how old I am. And there was a book that was assigned to us in a strategy and operations class called The Goal. Now, if anyone roughly who went to business school, anywhere from the late 80s to like the late 90s, probably came across the book. And it was written about a guy, it was written as a novel about a guy who had to turn around this printing plant in the Midwest, maybe even St. Louis, who knows? And he had no idea how to do it. And he ends up running into this high-priced consultant on the airplane who kind of talks him through and ends up becoming his mentor. And all the challenges that he goes through are written as like parts of a novel. So for finding the constraint that's the bottleneck on his process, it actually talks about him taking his son on a Boy Scout trip. And there's one kid named Herbie who's slowing everybody down. People today, by the way, if you tell anyone like, what's the Herbie, you'll know if they've read the book. People remember it. And I was always struck, wow, this is not like all the other textbooks. I can't remember any other textbooks. And this wasn't awesome writing, but it was far more memorable. It was a far more effective way to get the information across. I mean, you guys, do you remember any of your textbooks from undergrad or business school if you went, or law school? No, not a one.
Not
I think
really.
I also remember Zen and the Art of Archery. That's
But
about it.
I do
Yeah.
remember a lot of the ones that were like books that I read, they're allegorical. I think there's one by the Arbinger Institute about being in the box that I remember that had that kind of storyline. So those ones are much more memorable for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, now it's 30 years later. Is it 30 years? Shit, yeah. It's like decades later, I still remember it. So I always wanted, ever since about 10 years ago, as I'd started doing my angel investing and I'd started working with a lot of companies in the accelerator format that Dream It was when I first started there, like I said, I really want to write The Goal, but for startups. So it's something that had always been on my mind to do, but I was always 120% doing one thing. And then after COVID, I ended up, for a variety of reasons, leaving Dream It. And I'm doing 6 or 7 different things. And it's not like any one of those things or the total of them or any less time, but it occurred to me that if I don't write this book now, I'm never going to do it. I sat down and I'm like, okay, I know what I want to write about. It's basically the outline of what I want to write about is all the curriculum and material that we developed for the first iteration of Dream It, for all our startups. That's great.
Yeah.
but I need to prove to myself I could do three things. So number one, I actually had to tell them his stories. I didn't want it to be like two guys sitting around their deck at a WeWork coffee table and it had to be like spaced in actual action, for lack of a better word. And like, for example, I have the conversation between the founder and his son. He's taking his son to school on the subway, and he kind of says in passing, "Isn't it cool that we, for the same $2.90, we can go 4 stops on the subway if we go all the way out to Coney Island?" And his son's like, "That sucks, Dad. You should pay for how many stops you go. If I owned the railroad, I'd make tons of money." And that works into a discussion of revenue models. Yeah. So I had to be able to do that consistently. And number two, I had to be able to talk in more than just my own voice, right? If I'm writing like an article for like the trade press, my voice is okay, I think, right? They seem to like it, but there's more than one person in the book. So I came to this method, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it worked for me, where for every person in the book, I actually have somebody in real life that I'm thinking about, and I picture them saying it.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of Easter eggs around the names of the different people in the book. Curious to see if they could figure out who they are. And the last piece was just, I hadn't written anything more than 800 words in years. I just didn't know if I could do it. So I managed to get about halfway through, and I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. Yeah. And actually, funny side story, out of the blue, I get a LinkedIn message from a guy named Rami Goldratt. And he's like, "You may recognize my last name. My father, Eliyahu Goldratt, wrote The Goal. And he passed a few years ago, and I've taken over his consulting firm. I'm going to be in New York. I'd like to meet." I'm like, Google Docs is spying on me and selling. I had no.
Oh my God!
Going on?
So it turns out, just out of total chance, he wanted to talk to me about something unrelated. It was about this consulting. He wanted to consult for me private equity funds in terms like to improve their portfolio companies and maybe get a piece of the exit.
Yeah,
which was kind of cool. We had a nice conversation about that. And then at the end, I'm like, "Rami, you want to hear something really funny?" I tell him what I'm doing. He did not write me a blurb, though.
Oh, that's disappointing, and I think that's a missed opportunity on his part.
We're gonna send him this podcast, and we're gonna let him know.
Listen,
he needs to come back and write you a blurb.
I get it. It's his father's legacy.
You can still do it in your second edition.
First.
How much of? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bree.
Oh, I was going to ask. So when it came to the character of the founder, which, so many VCs have such strong opinions on what makes a great founder, how did you develop that character? I know it was based on a person that you know, but I'm sure that you tried to add some realistic other pieces.
No, it's a great thought. From the very beginning, I knew where I wanted to start, which was basically as close to the beginning as I could. So I started off in a law firm's evening event where founders are pitching their ideas to VCs. I'd been to far more of those than I care to remember. But back when I was an entrepreneur and when I was investing, the best I can say is like the really good ones have macadamia nuts in back as part of their spread. So that's usually a good sign of quality.
I'll keep that in mind.
We notice. But I wanted to start there because that was an opportunity for the founder to meet the angel investor that was going to be his mentor. I think that was a good way to make that intro. And I also wanted the founder to be a solo founder because that's an issue, right? There's a lot of VCs who won't invest in solo founders. And I wanted to be able to talk about the process of finding a co-founder. Can't really do that if, they already have one. And I wanted also surface a lot of real issues, what it feels like to be a founder, what the reality is, not like the Steve Jobs biopic and the drama, but the actual reality of you're spending a lot of time in front of a computer, right? Pulled away from the computer to go out and do your customer discovery, and you have to actually think about how to do that. So I wanted to get the sense of the reality of the situation. That's where I did. Now, it just so happens that the entrepreneur that I wanted a voice. So the best entrepreneurs, I always say, and I got this quote from somebody else. I wish I could remember who told me it because I use it a lot. So he should get credit for it. The best entrepreneurs have reasoned but loosely held opinions. They should know why they're doing it. And if somebody just gives them other advice and they don't really say, they shouldn't be like a weather vane and just swing with whatever they heard last. But if they get a good logic behind it, they should be like, okay, that's right. That makes sense. I'm going to do it. Not be overly wedded to their original idea. when
Yeah.
there's a strong case to be made. So there was one founder in particular, when I was doing ed tech, actually before I was doing ed tech, but he was an ed tech startup who had this kind of unflappable, no drama kind of way about him. And, really good example of that. Okay, tell me why. If it makes sense, I'll get kind of attitude. And it just by complete chance, it turns out that entrepreneur is Black. So I ended up making the main character Black because I figured, that's what I'm thinking. I might as well have like my description match, the image I have in my mind's eye. But I was actually a little hesitant to do it because I didn't want to hit any false notes about, any other issues or not talking about any other issues. But at the end of the day, I'm like, if that's who it's based on, then that's how I'm going to describe the character.
Yeah.
Cool.
You mentioned, and we talked about it a little bit while you were opening the gift, kind of this a standard practice in a lot of accelerators is going through market sizing. And many of them have a template about what market sizing looks like. It's a TAM, SAM, SOM. Everyone knows those acronyms. And, whether you're looking at a bottoms up or a top down approach, it always feels very prevalent on slide decks, et cetera, that you review and you judge. And what other kind of frameworks like that did you approach in your book with care, but also just say, look, this isn't taught right. This is total bullshit. Let's cut it down to brass tacks. What other kind of things come to mind that you touched on?
I'm so tactful and shy, so I would never tell people they're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So TAM SAM SOM's like the big one. In fact, I wrote an article a couple of years back, and I always like to mess around with the editors because I know the editors always change your headline or your article title to what they want it to be. So I always make it like outrageous, and they always tone it down.
Yeah.
My working title on that one was, why your market slide probably sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put strike through on the word probably.
Yeah.
And the editors, the first time an editor's punched up my title, it went to press as why Andrew Ackerman hates your market slide.
Wow.
They
So,
really personalized it.
Props, Franco, and he's a good friend. So I just appreciated that. So what other things do people do crazy wrong?
And specifically that you address in the book. Because
in the book.
I think,
So,
yeah.
The other one, this is like an order of magnitude lower, and I'm more gentle about it, is the go-to-market slide. So the go-to-market slide is most of the people who do it, and a lot of people actually just forget about it and don't put it in their deck. But it's, we're going to go to conferences and we're going to do direct, outbound sales, et cetera, et cetera. But that's only a third of your go-to-market slide.
Yeah.
That's the how. But what I really want to understand before that is who and why. Yeah. So talking to a startup earlier today, and they're starting off and they're actually doing this kind of the ability for like retailers in Latin America to offer store credit in rural areas, which is tough. There are a lot of people unbanked. Huh. So in his case, he's starting in Colombia. It's because he lives in Colombia, and then he's going to do the rest of LATAM. So that's kind of a trivial example, but it could be a case where you're creating call recording software, which is the fictional startup in the book, but you're going to start with real estate agents because they are on the go all the time, live off their phone, and they're jumping from place to place. So it's a big issue for them, even bigger than it would be for someone else who might still use it, but might be at a desk more of the time. Who in that case would be real estate agents or general contractors. We were talking about that as well, contractors. The why is because they live on the road all the time, so it's a bigger pain point for them.
Yeah.
Then the how is, okay, we're going to go through realtor associations, or we're going to scrape lists or what have you. But that last piece, the how, is what most startups will have, and they just kind of either don't talk about or they assume that you understand why.
Yeah.
It was in the initial market they have.
Yeah. I've been teaching a class called Velocity here in St. Louis and Alton, Illinois at the Wedge Innovation Center. Shout out to John Simmons and Kiku and all my friends there. But as part of the Velocity coursework, we talked about value proposition. And what was intriguing to me, and I'm curious because you're adjunct professor of
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. You work with a lot of younger founders as well, but earlier founders, whether they're young, old, I don't care what it is. One thing that's been consistent is that their first attempt at value proposition, where you're trying to create conviction in your audience that there's differentiation in what you're doing vis-a-vis what the status quo is. They focus so much on the feature set and not why. The
Tell me
customer
benefits, not
experience,
features.
that's right. And I feel like the customer experience, and we recognize there are different customers along a value delivery chain, different links, and everyone might get different utility from that. But in your target customer and that target link, it's so important for founders to really focus on why a customer would choose your solution product over the status quo because of what is their experience? How is it enhanced? How is their journey from point A to point B better, faster, cheaper, easier, et cetera? And I'm curious to see, has that been your experience too? That's always a point of correction for early stage founders that you deal
I
with?
wouldn't say always.
Yeah.
Let me just roll it back. Like, though there are very few hard and fast rules when it comes to what should be in a pitch deck.
Yep.
The acid test is, does it get you the meeting? Does it get you, a startup to give you a term sheet? And I
Yep.
don't care if it's in crayon on the back of a cereal box, if it does that. But to maximize your odds of getting there, there's certain things that work better than others. But other than Tam Sam Sam, which is horrible, and we should put a stake through it in the crossroads at midnight,
Yeah.
I'm kind of okay with different ways of getting it across if it works. So I
Yeah.
don't generally recommend that the startups actually have a slide on their ICP, their ideal customer profile,
Sure.
on their value proposition. But if you don't, it has to be very clear in the other slides. Like, it comes out in your solution slide, it comes out in
That's right.
your competition slide. Like, it's the 9/10 of the iceberg that's below the waterline. It has to be there, and it has to show, it has to manifest itself in different places. And by the way, I go in the other direction. I have what I call a milestone slide, which is pretty non-standard, but I recommend it because it pulls together elements of information that's usually in 12 different places, or just not, that I want to see. So I recommend that in the book that other people don't, and I recommend that to all my startups.
Yeah.
But so early on, there's a lot of founders that become enamored of a certain solution and lose
Yeah.
sight of what problem are you really solving? How painful is
Yeah.
that really? Or they're like, you got to be a quantum level different and better, and obviously different and better for people to switch. We don't switch for like incremental improvements. They fall into the trap of, I really wanted this solution. It's a small improvement. So I'm going to have 5 other features, and maybe the 5 features together will add up to, one big benefit. That rarely works also. I see that a fair amount. I also see a bunch of record scratches where they're like, oh, here's my problem. And then the solution doesn't actually solve that problem.
Yes. There's that
That's
disconnect.
There is that disconnect. The overarching question that we didn't talk about, that again, it could be a slide, but I say you could put it in other slides. But the one that's the big overall deal breaker that a lot of entrepreneurs miss is the why now.
Yes.
So you guys get it. You've seen it a zillion times. I'll make it explicit for anyone listening who's not quite sure. So there are a lot of hungry, talented founders out there. There are a lot of like morons out there too, but there's a lot of hungry, talented founders out there.
Sure.
And the moment something becomes technically feasible, or the moment like the regulations change to allow it, or whatever, there's this discontinuity in time that makes something possible that wasn't possible a year ago. A lot of entrepreneurs are like, oh man, that's changing everything. I can do something with that.
Yeah.
Whether it was machine vision, was AI, whether it was speech to text, drop all the buzzwords, blockchain. Once you've opened up that bridge, whatever it is, a lot of people are going to start banging against those problems that were not solvable before, or at least not solvable as well,
Yeah.
with the new tech or the new regulations that allow whatever they allow. And they're going to come up with a bunch of new solutions. And over time, like, a lot of people end up with very similar solutions. It's like parallel evolutions, dolphins and sharks. They look similar, totally different, but that's a great design.
Yeah.
You have this pressure where you're going to get, with a fairly short order after whatever this discontinuity is, a bunch of startups like hitting this new virgin territory with these new ideas, which is an awesome time to be in VC.
Yeah.
But what startups don't get is that the flip side is also true. if there isn't a discontinuity within the past 2 or 3 years that you can point to, and a sharp discontinuity. Now there's more millennials. That's a gradual demographic change, or none of that. It has to be pretty sharp.
Yeah.
There's no sharp discontinuity. Then that means what you as the founder are working on right now could have been done 5 years ago. And I'll tell you, if it could have been done 5 years ago, 99.9% of the time, someone has done it. Multiple someones have done it.
Yeah.
So it's either somebody who's far ahead of you, and then they didn't do their homework on competition because they just want to code, or they're not anyone in that space because a lot of people tried it and failed because it turns out it's not something the market really needs. Right. So whenever I come across a startup, I'm like, where's your why now? And I explain that to them. And there's a lot of hemming and hawing. I say, listen, like, you got to go back to basics.
Yeah.
Go out there and like really hit all the VCs that invest in the sectors, look at their portfolio pages.
Yeah.
Use the Wayback Machine, look at their portfolio page 3 years ago, back when AngelList actually had like startups listed that you could look through, look at everything in that space. Now you can use Crunchbase, Mattermark, you name it, PitchBook.
Yeah. But
you really got to be, if you don't have a why now, it's an uphill battle. So what you're really telling me is you're saying, hey, Vik, listen, I know a lot of startups have tried this before, but they're all freaking morons. I'm the only one who's figured this out. That's a tough one. It's like an argument of elimination. It's I've seen one company in my entire career where there was no why now. Actually, two. I take it back. Two companies in my entire career where there wasn't a why now, and they were right. But this is at like 10,000 startups plus.
Right. I'm seeing a lot of AI companies that are kind of falling into this category of, hey, I've got some cool new shiny tech. Maybe they don't figure out their ICP and the why now. But I wanted to kind of bring it actually to AI tools and your book of your process and how you wrote your book. And did you use any AI tools? And what tools did you find to be useful in the writing process of your book?
Sure. By the way, if you're an AI company, I'll give you a buy on why now, because AI is early. It's still the quantum level jump in the availability of AI tools and the quality of it. That is a good why now.
Yeah.
Now we've got a whole lot of, I'm doing this too, or I'm doing this too, and maybe they still suck, but at least they passed the first sniff test. Okay, so the irony is I didn't use any AI tools in the writing of the book, but I'm using a lot of them right now in the marketing.
Oh, okay.
So
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, in fact, this morning I've been banging my head against using an AI tool called, hold on, I don't know why I'm trying to remember it. I have it in the screen right behind me. It's called, which they all run together. This is Poe.
Andrew is literally multitasking as he's on the podcast.
Well, the query is running in the back. No, it's not. I stopped.
He's got 4 agents in the background.
Slowly during the actual interview. I'm using Poe to iterate through different Google app scripts. So what I'm trying to do is I want to send out my, hey world, the book is out now, email. But I don't like sending out purely generic emails. So even when I do kind of mass-ish emails, I do mass custom. So I used to use Get Another Mail merge back in the day, and I would make it so, like the first sentence was a merge, and it was personal to each person. Where I used Contactually before Compass bought them and took them in, where they queue up your mail merge, but you could customize each one.
Yep.
Because I think it's just a better experience, get better response rates. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull out from all my contacts and all the people that I've emailed over the past couple of years and bucket them into people that I've spoken to recently and maybe have already talked about the book with them versus people that is going to be totally new to them, and send them, and maybe even parse them a little differently and really customize that outreach. But my first step is to actually be able to go into Gmail and pull the information out. So I could pull my contacts out easily enough. That's a straight export. And I had ChatGPT actually clean up, like the data comes out in a really disgusting format. So I had, ChatGPT cleans it up nicely, tries to determine what the right email address is to use. I even had to parse, like, who do I know that may be a podcaster? Who do I know that, may teach entrepreneurship? And that was like fairly low-hanging fruit. But this actually, there's a couple of different ways to do what I'm thinking. One is you buy a browser plugin that can scrape or, put hooks into your Gmail, or you do the Google scripts. And I have too many browser plugins. So I said, let's try to do the script first. So there was a script, and it was actually on Reddit to begin with. I did it, and it kind of timed out, and it didn't get what I needed because the date that the thread was initiated, not the date that the thread ended. And one of the things that I do to help people out when I'm reconnecting with them is I'll actually just take an old email, I'll reply to it, change the subject line, and they can see the history if they want to remember what we're talking
Right.
about. So that's a big issue for me.
Yeah.
The initial email in the thread versus the last email in the thread.
Sure.
So I've been debugging this, and it's kind of weird. So I feel like I'm halfway between being the product manager dealing with a very eager and very fast, but not that talented programmer, right? Like a G programmer, versus me actually writing and trying to debug my own script. Like I'm looking at it and it kind of looks like JavaScript. I can kind of follow what's going on, which I
Yeah.
tried to do to begin with to see is it right. And I'm like, oh, fuck it. Like I'm just gonna keep doing it. It's faster for me to do it, see if it works, and then go back and say, hey, dude, it timed out after 500. And, okay, we're gonna do it in smaller batches. So that's been an interesting experience. That's example number one. I can give you others if you want.
No, but more examples is perfectly fine. I would like to just point out Routledge, Taylor, and Francis Group. You've published this book. Invest in AI data scientists, bring them on board, get them to utilize these tools so that Andrew doesn't. He can focus on writing, shut the fuck up and go back to sleep, or an Entrepreneur's Odyssey Part 2.
Publishing is one of the slower industries to adopt tech.
Yeah.
So you can see behind me, this is the cover, guys.
Yes, absolutely.
You can't see all of it, but part of the whole idea of the maze, I can give you the backstory now, but let me first tell you like why I'm bringing it up. So I wanted a cover that was as distinct as the style of the book itself.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't want it to look like a textbook. I didn't want it to look like a generic business book, which was very nice. They sent me like all these stock cover, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's okay, but it looks generic.
Yeah.
So I hooked back up with one of the designers from one of the first cohorts I ran at DreamIt, who's a fantastic designer, very cool human being. I don't know whether his design shop is his main business and his brewery is his sideline, or if it's the other way around. But he's that kind of guy. And red hair, handlebar mustache, very cool guy. And he's very talented at what he does. So the first couple of iterations on themes, I don't know if we used Dolly or I don't remember which tool it was. We used AI to generate a whole bunch of different cover themes quickly. But Routledge wouldn't let us use an AI generated cover because they're concerned about the copyrights. In theory, you could make the argument that everything that you've trained your AI model on are the originals, and then whatever it spits out is a derivative work.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in practice, I don't buy that. It's the same as like a human being, like spending in the early part of their career as an artist, drawing fruit or kind of try to draw similar stuff to the masters. And that all becomes kind of part of the mental inputs as they develop their own styles and their own unique work. But since that wasn't litigated yet, they're like, no, you have to have an old school designer do it.
Trust me, we know about the AI litigation.
Yeah. So if I'm not going to get sued, so I won't need Cooley on this because I spilled the money for it.
You're in the clear. No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I really do. I will say this. I think, and again, I have to read the book. By the way, we should have some sort of thing where the first 10 viewers, listeners to retweet, call us out on LinkedIn, we will buy the book and send it to you immediately when it comes out. Let's do that.
You read my mind. Yes.
By the way, I actually do have an offer that I've been doing.
Wow.
I did an in-person event. It was only 40 people in the room. I did it Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I said to them, listen, it's just out in pre-order right now. It's not going to ship until, it's going to ship on May 15. I just found out it's going to ship a little early.
Oh, great.
Oh, okay. Early. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Which like, when does that happen? So, because Bree, I hit my deadlines on the editing. Just messing with you. I was a couple of days late, but not horribly late. I said, listen, it's not out in print yet, but I'll tell you what I want to do for the people who are brave enough or motivated enough to take a leap of faith. For the first 100 people to pre-order it, I'm going to open up the master classes that I give for startups in accelerators that I've run or that friends of mine run.
Very cool.
Everything from prospecting to investors, to writing the perfect pitch deck, to making your elevator pitch really effective. All these things that I give to guys like Reach, which is the Second Century Ventures accelerator programs, Techstars. I did it actually 2 hours ago for Seed Starts, a Latin American program. All those things that I do only for accelerator programs, I'm going to open up a few of them to the general public, and I'm going to reserve maximum 20 people per session.
Yeah.
And they can pick elevator pitch deck, customer discovery, whatever it is they want.
Yeah.
They can have access to that masterclass the same way as if they were going through, YC or Techstars. And I've already had from that event, I've already had 5 people forward me the purchase confirmation from Amazon saying, sign me up.
That's fantastic.
Listen, if you are here with us right now, please reach out to myself or Bree, and we'll make sure that you're a part of that offer with Andrew. One of the things that I love about your approach to this book is that it's so anchored in storytelling. The fact that it's not written like a typical textbook, a business book, and that it is in this kind of first person fictitious founder perspective allows, I think, a lot of flexibility for the founder to understand how the road ahead isn't a template and that it's unique. I think, Andrew, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what makes a good VC is an ability to pattern match so that they don't invest in that pattern and that they actually invest in the outliers of those patterns.
That's an interesting way to put it, actually. Okay, I'll tell you what I was going to say, which is kind of
Yeah.
my response.
No.
I'm going to think about the way you formulated it because it's kind of an interesting way to think about it. I tell people that startups are a chain, not a rope. And what I mean by that is, in a rope, if a couple of strands are frayed or they break, the rope still holds. But in a chain, if one link is broken, the chain's useless.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter how strong your go-to-market is if your market size is too small for me to make money on it. Fix that link, like different revenue, different market, whatever it is. If that link is not fixable, you don't have anything. So using that as my mental template, when I was first, getting in and angel investing, starting to do it, I would go through their deck, checking each link.
Yeah.
Every link. And in a weird sort of way, like every slide in the deck that I recommend in my format, that's a link in the chain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to do that. But as you start getting better at being a VC, and certainly like now that I've focused on specific industries and you get to know those industries really well, you can kind of look at it. Once you get the idea, like, oh, they're selling to architects, and skip forward to their market size. It may be too small. You get to know which link is probably going to be the weaker link first. So your pattern recognition lets you just, get to the heart of the matter faster.
Yeah.
And once you've found a broken link, like, you don't have to read the rest of it. So it's a little depressing because you're going out there looking for things that are wrong.
Yeah.
It's true though. That's exactly what happens. And most VCs I know, like they know exactly where to look and they're like, oh, the pricing's off. They're not going to be able to have a high enough LTV. They're out. Or
tech, there you go. Let's go check the revenue model first.
Exactly. ICP, there's not enough of them. Their TAM is too small. That's exactly what I've heard from other VCs. And I think that's an important perspective for entrepreneurs to understand. That is how rigorous your deck is being looked at. They're looking for the weakest link.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just the sheer volume that all of us have to deal with. I've probably looked at 10 to 20,000 decks over the course of my, career. And at the end of the day, you've got to have an initial filter, an initial screening process. And it's nothing against the founders that come out here, but a pitch deck is really gaming a system. It's learning how to develop enough conviction in your audience to get that first or second meeting with the investor. And so often people kind of approach it like it's a throwaway item. And at the end of the day, if you don't check all the boxes, then you're just not going to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I'm going to take what you just said about 10 seconds ago and just turn it sideways a little bit. I don't think it's a throwaway item per se. Think about a lot of things in life, like a sales funnel. So you're getting from one step to the next, and you lose a certain percentage at each step. But your ultimate goal is to get down to the bottom of the funnel when you've got a signed contract, legal blesses it, and the money hits the bank.
Yep.
So if you think about the fundraising process like a sales funnel, which it very much is, you've got your top of your funnel where you're prospecting to try to come up with 100+ investors that might be interested in the kind of startup you're doing. Yep. There's actually interesting data behind the 100, but I got lucky. It felt right to me, and then I found the data later.
It's not in your book?
What's that?
Is it in your book?
The data? No.
Okay.
No.
I was just curious.
Maybe as a throwaway line. Actually, I might have said that. Actually, it might have been a line or two in the book explaining it. I'll tell you it. It was a while ago, DocuSign did a study of pitch decks that were sent, and they correlated it to closed rounds. I think they were doing it at the seed and Series A level within 6 months to a year. And what they found, they curved it, right? They graphed it, I'm sorry. And the graph keeps rising pretty steeply until you get about 50, and then it keeps rising a little less steeply. And it starts to, I won't say exactly top off, but get a little shallower when you hit 100.
Yeah.
So I just intuitively, like that, the feel that I gotten from doing a lot of it. And then when the data come along, I'm like, okay, I'm not full of crap. So there is actually good data behind it, but you need to fill the top of your funnel. Otherwise, if it's not enough at the top of the funnel, you're not going to get enough at the bottom. That's axiomatic. And your top of the funnel, other than like compiling the list and figuring out who they are, your elevator pitch, your 20 to 30-second description, like that exists to get you 3 or 4 minutes of the investor's attention.
Yep.
Right? Come up to that person at the end of a conference where she's been on a panel, and 40 other people behind you, and she just wants to go home, her feet hurt, or she's got to look at 5 other decks of companies are actually in due diligence with, or the guy's like, I'd like to see my kid before he falls asleep. And so you only have those 30 seconds, and they're only going to give you 2 or 3 minutes. But if you give like the 30 seconds, they're like, oh, that's interesting. How do you do this?
Yeah.
Then first of all, the question, like, wait, I have no idea what the fuck you do. That's not the right question. But like a meaningful question that shows that they're thinking about it. That's all the elevator pitch exists to do, to get you that one step down in the funnel.
That's right.
Your pitch deck is kind of in the middle of the funnel, right? So I've said, hey Vik, do you know Bree? She's invested in these 3 startups, and they're in the same kind of industry and type of customer as mine. So I think they might be interested in mine.
Yeah.
And you make the intro, and Bree's great. Have him send me his pitch deck. So I send the pitch deck, and then, either I sent it beforehand or I'm sitting down with Bree for a half hour. That pitch deck just buys me that next step, either the half-hour meeting, or if I've got the half-hour meeting, it needs to get Bree, sorry, to be interested enough that she takes it to the Monday morning meeting and says, hey, I kind of have an interesting startup. What do you guys think about? And hopefully it was compelling enough that they say, okay, run with that, Bree. That's interesting. Put another couple hours into looking to the market, what the competitors are like, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it's not a throwaway, but it's a step. It's a key that unlocks the next step. And where all these tools go wrong is where people don't realize what it's supposed to do. So people who think the elevator pitch is going to get them funding try to put everything about their company into it, and they sound like the end of a pharmaceutical ad. You don't.
That's so spot on.
Yeah.
So spot on.
or back in the day, hey, I have a question for you guys. Do you guys see one-pagers anymore?
No.
I try not to. I actively avoid them.
Sometimes we ask for them at Cooley. We actually ask them to create one for us, but I don't see them just being sent.
So I actually like one-pagers, and I think they're very useful when done right. I just know that 80% of the time they suck. So
I think that's why I don't ask for them anymore.
They're literally a one-page where highlights your company, not your entire pitch, but enough highlights so that the VC can look at it and decide, oh, I do want this meeting. It's almost, a bit of an overview.
Yeah, I think so. Here's my take on this, and you let me know if you agree with this or not. If someone gave me a one-pager and it was just one line, it was their elevator pitch, I'd be much happier than if they gave me a one-pager that was just full of stuff, and my eye didn't know how to train where to go, and it's too much content on it.
So there are about 6 fails on the one-pager.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's hear them.
Okay, well, I promise you I'll give them to you.
Yeah.
The elevator pitch is like a set of Legos.
Yeah.
And you use those set of Legos in a couple of different places, but it's usually in the warm intro request. You put your Vik, as you know, my startup does actually A, B, and C. Now I'm telling you that, you know what I do. I'm telling you that, so at least I know that it's being conveyed in a clear and concise way. And I want to make life easy on you. I don't want you to have to actually think or type things out. So I'm feeding you that, but that's my elevator pitch right there. It's 2 sentences maybe.
Yeah.
Then I see that Bree's invested in A, B, and C, and I think she's a good fit. You don't have to think about that either. Okay, that makes sense. It would be a good fit. Yeah. And then I'd say, do you know Bree well enough to make an intro? That's my way of giving you an easy out if you don't want to do it.
Sure. Double opt-in.
Ask somebody else. Yeah. So I use the elevator pitch there. The one-pager, when done right, it's not everything in your deck. It's the key elements, like one step below that elevator pitch, where I might have told you my market size in the elevator pitch, but I probably didn't tell you my revenue model. You might be curious about that. I should have told you how much I'm raising in my elevator pitch, but I didn't write like I've raised X dollars previously. I probably didn't do a lot about the competition, and I'll give you a little bit more about it in it. Okay, I promised you, Pri, I'd give you the fails. Let me see if I can get all 6 from memory. There is the wall of text fail. Right? I'm going to get all the information from my deck. I'm going to shrink it down to a 6-point fail. Right? So that's a fail number 1. And what that tells me is the startup, A, has no aesthetics, but also may not actually know the important things about their startup. It's amazing how often the founders don't actually know what their superpower is. And sometimes they have one. They just don't know which one it is. Number 2 is the feature list. Right? It comes in red, it comes in blue. I don't freaking care. I don't care about all those features. That's probably not what's going to get you into the meeting. Oh, it integrates with this. I'm like, I didn't even know it was important. Related to that is the FAQ, who cares? It's an attempt to predict all the questions you might possibly have about my startup. And it's deli boring, and sometimes it gives me reasons like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but that could be a problem. I probably shouldn't invest. Right, so that backfires.
It's the comparison of that is, and what I like to call it is the forces me to ask more questions than you have answers for.
That's not what the point of this is. Anyway, I don't remember if this is a separate one in the wall of text, but I just call it the butt ugly. And it's usually a combination of me putting everything in one. I've taken all my slides, I've shrunk them down, and that's my competition section. And the 6th one is the 2-page one-pager, which is particularly annoying because it's in the fucking name. But really, like the mentality behind it is always my startup's really complicated. I understand like other people should have 1-pagers, but I'm a special snowflake and I should have 2. And I'm like, dude, I've had like stuff that like the DoD invests in, or they give free money for. It's usually InQtel that gives the money for. Like, they were okay. They managed to get it across in like a 1-pager or the equivalent. But of course, this is all kind of academic because it's kind of fallen the way of the cummerbund. But it's technically the right thing to wear, but not many people rock it anymore.
I do think kind of getting to the storytelling aspect of it, and this is one of the reasons why I tell students.
That was the question. I'm sorry. I totally avoided your question.
No, I think you got it. I don't know.
Hold on. I wanted to tell you something. I wanted to do this is a little embarrassing confession. Oh, keep drinking.
Oh, yeah.
I'll refill while we're talking. I actually don't like business books.
I don't either.
So I find that most business, and there are a couple of exceptions. Like I'll give a quick shout out to Jeff Busgang, who wrote ages and ages ago, wrote Mastering the VC Game. He has a new book coming out right now. So the difference between what he writes and a few other people writes, and most of it, is that most of the business books you'll see on the shelf are a 20-page PowerPoint that has been stretched to 220 pages because the publisher can't print anything that short.
100%.
They get the same boring, bland, probably Midwestern ghostwriter in this kind of upbeat, but same, oh my God, you want Valium tone of voice, who then follows a series of name drops, anecdotes, illustrate the point, and then at the end of each chapter, there's like a shaded box text with the key points. And if I just went into the book, I ripped out those last pages and just read those last pages, I'd have the entire book.
This is the premise, by the way, of Blinkist. I don't know if you're familiar with Blinkist, but just it's the Cliff Notes of today. I agree 100% with you. I think it's one of the reasons why I've decidedly told myself I'm not going to just put shit out on Twitter or LinkedIn and be a talking head.
I'm not going to say it unless it's something that I would actually
because it's already been said. You know what? I just don't feel the need to regurgitate what everyone else is explaining. So I'm with you on that. Let me move on a little bit to kind of probably the tail end of the book when we're talking about fundraising. Bree's also got a guide book coming out in the near future about helping founders to position themselves for a successful fundraise. And we've seen the goalposts kind of move. How did you approach that aspect of the book, the fundraising side of the book for the founder?
So there's a couple of different angles to this. Let's start with the whole goalpost thing, right? There's, depending on where the market is, like if it's a hot market, a frothy market, or kind of dead market, or, now we're kind of on the upswing again. I feel like we're kind of in a lukewarm to warm market, depending on, not AI, if you're in AI.
Yeah, that's a
For
different
most
beast in
industries,
itself. Yes.
it's not bad,
Yeah.
right? It's a little harder than average, I think. But, fundraising is never fun. It's never even in great environments.
Sure.
Don't be disheartened about that. Like the people who walk in there with a cocktail napkin, that doesn't really happen. But the people who get money thrown at them, it's pretty rare. It happens at golden moments in time. And even then, there are people who can't raise. So if you're a founder out there, don't let, other people's idealized view of a handful of startups dishearten you too much. The basic goal behind fundraising on a tactical level is you want to know how much money it's going to take you to reach a meaningful, fundable next milestone within usually 18 to 24 months.
Yeah.
Right? It could be a little earlier in some cases, if you really just need to get the extra little hump over the hump and you don't want to get too much dilution, and it's not going to be much longer because VCs don't like to give you that much rope.
No.
Nor do you want to take it, because if you make a lot of progress, you can raise money at a better valuation later. Rather than raise it all at a low price per share.
That's right. Much less expensive with regards to the equity that you're giving away. But
where you need to be to raise that next round changes a little bit by industry, changes a little bit by sector. The gold standard is you want to talk to the investors who are one step ahead of where you are now.
Yeah.
Or you talk to the investors that might invest in you because they also know, what their portfolio companies need to hit to get to that next round. And you say, hey, Bree, if I get to $2 million ARR, all ARR, let's just say for sake of argument, does that open up a Series A for me these days?
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, oh, yeah, it might, or it might not, or, usually it's a pretty fair target. But you test the water to figure out where that next goalpost is. And then you got to figure out, okay, so for me to hit that number in 18 months, which really means I want to hit it closer to 12 months because I want to give myself, 4 to
6 months of
that next round.
Absolutely.
Good market less, in a bad market more, but really means what do I need to get there in a year? What resources do I need to do? What things do I need? And then that works backwards into how much money you need to raise. And as long as you're kind of in this kind of Goldilocks zone of the right amount of money for the kind of round you're raising to get to the right next step, and then, then you're going to be okay. But when you're outside of that zone, usually because you need to raise a lot more to get to the next step, then it's difficult to the point of maybe not possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are a lot of founders out there that don't go to the Stanfords, the Berkeleys, even the University of Chicago's, Harvard, MITs that are building right now that, see an opportunity. And because the tech stack and building has never been more accessible than ever, they feel like, hey, I've got something here. I'm solving a problem. I'm building towards something. The value proposition, the elevator pitch, all of these things are we see some, a potential successful outcome here. But they don't have that network of people that can create warm intros for them, that can even get them in front of folks. I know this is an easy question to answer, right? But what do you think is the best route for a founder to go who has, they're working their ass off, they've got a value proposition, they're reading the Entrepreneur's Odyssey, and now they're looking at where do I go from here? How do I access that capital?
Let's start with the first thing there. The smartest people that I went to school with weren't always the most successful. And there's a fuck ton of really great entrepreneurs who did not come from Berkeley, MIT. That's not in any way a disqualifier, especially since
not at all.
The myths that I think people are starting to realize is a myth. It's not the college founder. It's very rarely somebody in their college dorm room doing things.
Yeah.
Especially in the B2B world, you got to have lived the problem and worked in the industry to know what the pain points are, to know how you're really solving them, to talk your customer's language. So most of the time you're talking about people, like most of my entrepreneurs are 30, younger. I got one entrepreneur who's in his mid 50s.
Sure.
Right now, the beauty of it is you got years of experience. and he's got tons of contacts. So it makes his life on the customer side at the very least. So they're better entrepreneurs in some ways.
Yeah.
It's harder because, then they have families and they have a high, nut to support, and you can't just drop everything and not get paid
Sure.
for a while. So there's maybe a sweet spot where, you're about to have your first kid, but like your first kid doesn't cost that much until they have to go to school. That's okay, especially if you have a spouse or a partner who's got a more traditional job and you've got healthcare covered. Don't stress about school that much. It's not as big a signal for real startups as maybe you might think.
Yeah.
Now, the second question is, warm intros are the gold standard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here, let's just walk it through. I get a cold email over the transom. Like, usually I glance at it, but it's like the last thing I do in a day.
Sure.
And I will occasionally respond to them because I used to work the accelerator, so I still have a little bit of a warm spot for the people who are like still young and clueless. And we used to still get stuff that came in, but a lot of VCs won't even look at anything that's not a warm intro or that they didn't reach out for. And the logic behind it is there's so many startups out there, and we as VCs are so networked. I'm not on everything. I'm on TikTok to ruin it for my kids. But I'm LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. I'm resurrecting my Instagram account because, I think that's the right thing to do here. I thought about doing TikTok. Like, why not zig while other people zag? But I'm like, I can't. I just don't have the energy to do it. When House Party was a thing, people were on House Party. When House was a thing, we're there.
That was short-lived, by the way.
Yeah, it was. We'll talk about that at a different time.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's how we're wired.
Yeah.
We are available that way. So there's a little bit of a mentality on our end that if you can't get to us, how are you going to get the customers?
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, by the way, nobody is, listen, if you're in Sofia, Bulgaria, and you're a startup, I totally forgive you for not having any warm connections in the New York startup ecosystem.
Yeah.
And if you want to go in that case and you pay like somebody to help make intros, I'll give you a pass on that.
Sure.
But I don't if you're a US based startup. Like paid introductions, that's a huge yellow flag to me. You should be able to find your way to me, or at least to a bunch of other people. And if not, that should be part of building your business, building your network.
Sure.
I think you kind of mentioned a story earlier where it's like from the VC's perspective of they're doing a panel and you're going and you're giving an elevator pitch. I mean, I think that's a great way to try to get in front of VCs. Go where they are and elevator pitch them.
Talk us in an appropriate way.
Yeah. And that's why you have to have a good elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I think you bring up a really good point. Here's the counterpoint that I want to challenge all of us on. And when I say all of us, all VCs, I'm in St. Louis. I think we've got a lot of amazing talent. The data actually shows that the very talented folks that have gone on to the West Coast and the East Coast to receive funding, build billion-dollar-plus companies, do it very well. We want them to build here, and I think that's a different problem. I think we need more funders. We need better access to capital, all that great stuff. But if you are in an area, and so colleges aside, right? Stanford, Harvard, MIT, whatever aside, you're outside of Silicon Valley, you're outside of New York. You don't have that short list and you don't have the access in terms of, hey, I'm in New York City. I can bump into Andrew at, one of the 100 events that you're at, right? Is the cold email the way to go? Is it
last resort? It's
the last resort. So what's the in-between?
So let's take it step by step, right? So we talked before the show about, my friend Ira Weiss at Hyde Park Ventures in Chicago.
Yeah.
He would not look at any startups on either of the coasts. And his philosophy was, you're in Silicon Valley and you're coming to Chicago for money. Did everybody in the Valley pass on you?
Yeah.
So his philosophy was like, he doesn't put it this way. And again, I wish I could tell you who told me this because it's a great way to put it. Talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. So you've got really sharp people in all parts of the country, and maybe not Alabama.
Yeah.
Really sharp people.
Oh boy.
Sorry about that. I just lost 1/50th of my sales. I'm sorry, guys. I'm kidding. No. So
I think everyone's going to just kind of think about your initial, group of 16 pick. And listen, Alabama over BYU.
That was my pick, though.
Yeah.
Based on nothing.
Yeah.
But no, so it's the talent is there.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how do you access A, customers, and B, capital?
Yep.
Right? You got to be near one and preferably both. If you're not near your customers, you're screwed. Now,
Yep.
okay, you're building like, a B2C, like gaming app, who cares? Like you could be virtually everywhere. But
Sure.
certainly B2B. So the beauty of things like ed tech is there's schools everywhere. Health
Yeah.
tech, there's hospitals everywhere. Construction tech, I mean, there's construction cranes everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So you're okay there on customers. So then the question becomes like, how do you access capital? And that's a lot harder because in a lot of the second and tertiary startup ecosystems, you've got a couple of angel groups, you
Yeah.
got maybe a co-working space, and that's kind of it. Now, as a good University of Chicago school kind of economics guy, like the funding will flow. So people do move out there. I've had VCs during COVID, they moved out to Tampa.
Yeah.
We were always going, move down to Tampa. We'll move a couple of years early. And there's some startups there. And, worst case scenario, the airport in Tampa is actually really efficient. They can go anywhere they want.
Yeah.
So over time, if there are pools of startups with talent that are not getting hooked up with capital, the capital will find its way to it to a degree. Then you ask yourself, if you are a young-ish founder, you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you could move anywhere, right? Your kids aren't like deep in school yet, or you don't have kids yet.
Yeah.
Where do you want to be? So thinking globally, you want to be in a country that respects the rule of law. So that if you build something, it won't be taken away and given to, one of the Chinese princelings, and I want that startup, it's mine now.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a country like, oh, it's a huge success. Oh, but you can't sell now. It's a national treasure. France, I'm looking at you. They gotten a little better. But you want to be in a country where if you start the startup and it's successful, you will benefit from it. Tax is low, high, I don't think that's a huge deal. Like there's no, within the developed West where you have good rule of law, we are still actually fairly low taxes relative to the rest, but I think that's a smaller issue.
Sure.
And then it comes down to, where do I want to live? Where's fun? Where my customers, obviously, but where's fun?
Yeah.
So that's kind of a problem if you're in Biscayne, North Dakota. So there's going to be a bit of brain drain to the places where more customers, more capital, and even just a more fun place for them to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It occurs to me in your questionnaire, you mentioned Robert Heinlein, who is the author of Starship Troopers, Stranger in a Strange Land, The Door into Summer. He, for listeners, viewers out there, American science fiction author, but more than that, he was the pioneer of the hard science fiction.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, there was a bunch of them at that time that were. Sorry, go on. I mean,
no, it's okay. But did you ever think that the reason why you wrote The Entrepreneur's Odyssey as a fictional founder going through a very realistic kind of experience was sort of because of the hard science fiction that you love?
I never really thought about it that way. I'll tell you the more obvious, and I'm going to think about this when we're done. I feel I'm a firm believer in you don't get to, you don't get anywhere meaningful in the first 5 seconds you think about something.
Yeah,
We'll
fair.
think about that some more when we're done. The thing about reading like a hard sci-fi, probably when you're a little too young to be a good idea, is you look at the world kind of a different way. Like you look at the world in I would say a more orderly way, but a more framework-ish way.
Yeah.
You look at a thing and you're trying to fit it into the pattern that makes sense. And especially at that point in time, this was before the whole dystopian, science fiction. Before like shows like Blade Runner had this view of the future where it's like today, but dirtier and crappier, but also very cool.
Yeah.
Back then, it was still very much, science was the answer. Science was going to solve the problems.
Yeah.
It could be, I mean, it could be some like tight squeezes, but at the end of the day, science wasn't the villain back then. So there's a way to look at the world where you're like, it's a problem, but this problem's solvable. Right? You just got to sit down, unemotionally dissect it, and figure out where the solution is. For writing this book, I don't know. I mean, I have to think about it, but I think I'm not that complicated a guy. I think it was just, I really like the goal.
Yeah.
I really don't like other business books because they're boring and the signal to noise ratio is too low. I said, if I'm going to write it, I want to write a book that's interesting enough for even a picky SOB like me to read.
That's great. And we can't wait to read it. The book is called The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, a novel approach to, give it to me again,
Startup success. Here,
startup success. There it
right
is.
there.
Yeah. The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, a novel approach to startup success. Really quickly, and I want to ask this before we jump into the Fidelity 5 questions. You've you've had a hand in building 2 startups. You've invested in over 70 companies over the past 2 decades. You've seen a lot of trends. I'm curious, maybe it was your wife with her jumping into real estate. How did you get into prop tech? And then really quickly, as investors, we kind of are attuned to following curves. The power law curve really shows us how distributions of outsized returns might occur. And then we've got the hype curve. And the hype curve is interesting because from a thesis perspective, we don't necessarily look at something like prop tech as where is it on the hype curve. Prop tech back in 2012 through 15-ish felt like to me that it was at the height of its hype. And then
2015, or do you mean
2012? 2012?
interesting? 2022, yeah, was like peak prop tech, or
Do
22.
you feel like, okay, so this is, as someone who's not in prop tech, right?
Yeah.
At all. This is not my sweet spot.
Yeah.
My question is, what made you really excited about prop tech, where you really made that, a part of your foundational thesis in investing?
Yeah, so that's a great question.
And then where are we on the hype curve with prop tech? Are we now past the trough of disillusionment? And there are some really fundamental, I know you've been on panels with AI and how it's being applied to prop tech. Where are we at with prop tech right now?
Sure. Let's take that step by step, right? 2014 and 2015, I'm running the New York office of Dream It. It's an archetypical generalist pre-seed program. We decide that, it's not bad being a top 5 or top 10 accelerator. We want to be number 1. And we take a cold, hard look in the mirror and we say, Y Combinator is just too far ahead. There's that virtuous cycle. The best founders want to be with the best program because they get the best investors. But the best investors want to be with the best program because then they get the best founders. And when you're too far ahead, like, you could do everything right, but you're still going to top out at number 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So we said, what can we do to be number 1? And I wish I could take credit for it. It wasn't me. It was Avi Savar, who was the CEO, new CEO of Dream It at the time. And, it was kind of an awkward conversation that he kicked off. It's blindingly obvious in retrospect. He said, we can't be number 1 at this. Where can we be?
Yeah.
So that kicked off a discussion. Like, we have all these later stage startups that want to work with us, but, they're not going to give us 5%, 8% of their company for 50, 75 grand. We have all these corporates who are like, bring us the cutting edge startups. And we bring them cutting edge startups. And they're like, wow, those guys are sharp. That's a real painful problem. I love their solution. You'll smile at it. But they're a little too early to work with a Fortune 100 company. So we're going to work for 6 to 12 months. And like morons, we kept bringing them the early stage stuff, and they kept saying 6 to 12 months. When Avi challenged us like this, we have those more mature startups. And we could just say, yeah, that's cute what you're saying. These are what we really want.
Yeah.
We had supply and demand for a new model. No one was playing there. We had to change 2 things, 2 small things. One was the program itself, and the other was the financial offer. Other than that, it was perfect.
Yeah.
So we ripped all that up and rebuilt it. But at that point, one of the key elements of going in that direction was to shift very hard. The main focus or foci of the program were getting them customers and getting them the investors who could lead a Series A. Not seed rounds, demo day, we threw it out the door. But to do that, we really had to focus on the biz dev side.
Sure.
And to do that effectively, it's a lot more efficient if you're focused on an industry rather than being a generalist. If you're doing biz dev for 12 different companies, it's hard. If you're doing it for 6 companies, they're all kind of K-12 or higher ed, that's easier. There's a lot more economies of scale.
Sure.
So the reason we chose, we'd always been doing health tech on the side. It's kind of a separate story, but the reason we chose ed tech to pioneer the new model was very simple. One of the founders went to Penn State and he convinced them that they should do an ed tech program, and they gave us $1 million. So that is the wrong reason to go into a sector.
Because an LP says so.
Well, no, it's a great reason if you need the money. It's not a great reason if you want to think about it from like a perspective of, where is this industry on the adoption curve?
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was great. And the model worked very well. I made 17 of my investments were in ed tech, all made in 2016.
Yeah.
And some were doing knock wood very well.
Yeah.
But then we made the decision the right way. By a series of fortunate coincidences, we got introduced to Jeff Vinnick. And if anything's familiar to you, it's either because you're a hockey fan and you know that he owns the Tampa Bay Lightning, or you were in finance and you used to run Magellan.
That's right.
So, a very successful guy, very nice guy. Could sit next to him on an airplane and not even know it. And he wanted to do something with the Tampa ecosystem. He bought the Lightning, and all of a sudden he comes down to Tampa. He said, I probably look at the city, falls in love with the city. And I was doing the startup ecosystem. And my first reaction when my friends, I have this guy in Florida wants to build a startup ecosystem in Tampa, is like, Tampa? I don't want to go to Tampa. Why am I going to bribe a crappy startup to go to Tampa?
Yeah.
Right? And he's like, okay, Andrew, I just need you to go Google Jeff Vinnick and then come back to me in 5 minutes, and then you'll understand why you're a moron, which happens to me on a regular basis. So I Google it and I realize, oh, there's 3 more zeros involved in this equation. And I'm like, okay, I'm wrong. Bronny, what do you have in mind? And it turns out that he didn't want to just, bribe startups that, didn't have any other choice to come to Tampa. He wanted the best startups to not come to Tampa permanently necessarily, though that would be nice, but to bring their technology down to Tampa to meet with the large companies like the Raymond Jameses that have their headquarters down there, so they could have access to the technology at the same time that their competitors in New York or Silicon Valley or Boston were getting it, so they could stay competitive. And it's like those big companies that actually, to a large degree drive the economy. And, when I heard it, I was like, that's exactly what we're doing with customer sprints. That's brilliant. We got to do this. So all this is bubbling around, and we've done our first program with the first two programs in 2 programs in ed tech. And I'd actually signed up ETS, the guys that do the SATs, for a little bit more money. They got approved of their board. They had to check in. And then it occurs to us like, oh my God, Vinnick he bought up 50 plus acres of the waterfront down there, and he was redeveloping it. So he's talking with GCs, he's talking with property managers, with real estate agents. That's a customer sprint right there. We've been talking about doing agreement real estate for a while, and construction tech. So we said, listen, let's do this. So we went in there and we looked at all of the activity at the seed and series A level in 2016. This is the year before we did it. And we then did the same thing for health tech back in, I believe it was 2011, which was the year before we launched health tech. And it turned out that within 1 or 2%, they were the exact same level of activity.
Wow.
And then we got in, and health tech had just taken off in a huge way. So then our thesis was, do we think that, real estate, we didn't even call it PropTech back then, we had real estate technology.
Real estate tech,
Large developers, large general contractors, property managers, real estate brokers, architects, do we think those firms are on a cusp of starting to actually adopt technology?
Yeah.
A bunch of interviews, like customer discovery, and we really felt like that change was in the air, that they were being more open to adopt technology than ever before. Placed a bet on it. We placed a bet that it wasn't stable at that kind of low level, but we were right at the beginning of an uptick.
Wow.
Right. Stretch a little bit to pat ourselves on the back. We were actually spot on with that.
Sure.
It worked out very well. I made another 31 investments between my prop tech and construction tech portfolio after that. 2022 was probably peak prop tech. It was frothy. Everyone else who wasn't in the space was like, oh, that's pretty cool. We should do that too. And, when your cabbie is asking you about a stock, it's time to sell. There was a lot of people in there. There were a lot of people coming out of them. The real estate world, and I'm $500 million real estate fund. I'll tell my buddies, hey, you should give me $2 million each, and I'll start a $20 million seed fund in prop tech, which for them, $1 million, it's like rounding error. So you had all these people coming in from the top end and bidding up valuations for a bit. And then there was a reversal when the economy slowed down a bit. A lot of these companies are mostly B2B, right? So if you're dealing with a Brookfield, you're dealing with a Related, and their business is a little slower. You're trying to sell them a 6 or 6-figure enterprise software deal, and you think it's going to take you 6 to 8 months. That's kind of what these do if you're good at it. And they're like, yeah, with the economy the way it is, we're just going to put a pause for another quarter.
Yeah.
And a quarter is like a blink of an eye for a corporation.
Sure.
For a startup that's raising in 18-month increments,
Mhm.
1/6 of their runway. And like that was a big problem for a lot of startups.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
that's really what happened. Now, to answer the last part of your question, do I think we've hit peak PropTech and we're on the way down? So I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I think that I've been doing this long enough that we go through waves where, oh my God, there's so much cool stuff happening. And
Yep.
a few years later, we're like, yeah, I'm only seeing all the same stuff. I'm not seeing anything exciting again. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
on.
You and Bree alluded to AI and sort of applications of AI and prop tech. I think we're beyond the trough of disillusionment. I think we're at the point where we're starting to see real use cases be impacted and disrupted in positive ways by kind of novel technologies. AI obviously is simultaneously at the top of the hype curve, but then also is already being adopted in so many different ways that it's really like this paradigm shifting technology. I have so many thoughts and things that I want to bring up from, the differences between an accelerator and a scale up program. You've got so much experience in that as well. I know we're running out of time. I want to encourage people to find you on all of the different social media and channels that they can find you.
Links will be in the description.
Links will be in the description. You've got a masterclass. You've got any number of bits of content that are out there. And then, of course, the book that comes out hopefully sooner rather than later, right? So we're looking at May instead of June
May
now.
15th is what they tell me.
May 15th.
Excellent.
So we'll figure that out for all of our listeners and watchers. You will be the first to know the first 20 or so. I think we're gonna hook you up. Do you want to play a little game called Fidelity 5 Questions with us?
Sure, but are we gonna get this other big
Yeah,
heavy
you
thing?
get to
Oh.
open that after the Fidelity 5 questions.
Oh,
okay.
you have to. Yeah, that is for after the Fidelity 5
I'm not
questions.
really good at this patience thing. So let's
Yeah.
play the Fidelity 5.
It's
See,
okay. It's okay.
This is
As-
rapid fire. So answer
Okay,
very
go for it.
quickly
Right,
and
rapid fire. I will say this, look, VCs, we're used to these 10-year cycles, right? But so whenever we get a chance for instant gratification, Bree, we're gonna
Amen.
take it.
fair
Okay?
enough.
All right.
Go for it.
But anyway, here we go. Each podcast, we have a segment that we now call Drinks with a VC, Fidelity 5 Questions, brought to you by Fidelity Private Shares. Andrew, are you ready to play?
I'm ready to play.
Okay, he's laser focused. He's in there. He's locked in. Bree, do you want to start us off?
Sure. What is your go-to karaoke song?
Oh,
Another One Bites the Dust.
Ooh, good one.
brilliant. Also, what I think about when I think about my portfolio right now. No, I'm just kidding. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. If you could invest in any fictional startup from a movie, TV show, or book, what would it be? I'm actually very interested in this answer from you, Andrew, because you don't watch a lot. You're not a binger, or at least you don't have the time
I am a
for it.
binger.
Are you a binger?
Oh yeah.
Okay, you're a binger. Oof. So this could be,
Well,
now I'm even more
there's not a lot
interested.
of good fictional startups. You got to go with Pied Piper.
Yeah.
The Pied Piper. Okay. All right. Okay. Nothing from Robert Heinlein that you want to bring up right now.
I mean, that's 80-year-old startups.
Okay. If you could do it all over again, would you rather be an investor or a builder?
Ooh.
I would still be a builder first, but I think I would have left my first startup a few years earlier to make the transition into VC sooner.
Okay. Do you feel like you're always, just as a random follow-up to this, do you think you're ever going to go back to being a builder?
Maybe. I think about it 4 or 5 times a day.
Yeah. Nice. Also, just for the emerging managers that are out there, for the authors that are out there, I think writing a book is building.
True.
Neither here nor there. Cool. All right. What movie best fits the future of the human race? WALL-E, where we've degenerated into an obese state due to anti-gravity in the metaverse. Avatar, where we're dominated by this quest for resources, new worlds, walking around in avatar bodies, or The Matrix, where we're all in a simulation and robots are really ruling the world.
So it's Avatar, but not for the reasons that you think.
Okay.
Because we're going to be stuck in this shallow worldview of black and white. that really doesn't capture the nuance of the realities of the situation.
Okay.
Which is
Okay.
why, by the way, Avatar hasn't held up as a movie. Great special effects, kind of a boring
It never
story.
did.
It really hasn't. It
What
really
is
hasn't.
okay? Next question. What is the one deal you passed on that you wish you hadn't?
Don't laugh at me. Palantir.
Oh,
I didn't
That's
pass on
tough
it
one.
per se. Like I was 3 months into my new job at the family office, or 4 months in. I had just sourced Facebook shares on the secondary market before there was really a secondary market. Got in at $1.35 a share. This is 2009, so it's like March 2009. The world's imploding, and my boss had just put $500,000 into Facebook, and I had the opportunity to get into Palantir's A round. And I'm looking at it, like, I know this is it. But like on their customer chart, 40% of their customers were undisclosed, which we knew meant CIA. But I couldn't, like 3-4 months into the job, I just couldn't sell that to my boss.
fair
Yeah.
enough.
Wow.
All
That
right,
is
let's
a
open the
solid
gift.
one.
That
Yeah,
is a
let's open
solid
it.
one.
That is a solid miss.
Yeah. Yeah, take my mind off of that one.
Yeah, let's
Blame
win
the
that last
investment-
gift.
Blame the investment committee. It's not your fault, Andrew.
Yeah. There's no shortage of other people to blame,
Yeah. Never.
but I know it's my own damn fault,
Yeah, never.
as an homage to the great Jimmy Buffett. Okay, so here's what I got here. Having taken the plastic
So
off, it's really
Andrew
neat.
he's got this big black box
It says
in front of him.
HG Premium Decanter Luxury Gift for Men. Right up
Oh.
until the for men part, I wasn't worried. Now I'm a little worried.
How
I don't know
misogynistic.
I don't know if a decanter for women looks any different, but let's
I've
roll
got-
with this
It
one.
sure
I
doesn't.
do have 3 teenage girls, so and there's only certain things I can't keep around the house.
Just as long as it's not shaped like a phallic kind of,
You know what? At this point, they'd be like, "Yeah, that's cool, Dad." There we go. Okay, I think I got it.
Here we go. Let's see this thing.
Okay. Oh, I realized by putting the box there, you can't see it.
No, I will point out that, look, Andrew, Bree and I have gotten, Bree is very locked in when it comes to giving gifts. Typically, we've got a vest with some silly inscription on it, plus our logo. We will
Very
get one to
nice.
you, but oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's not
with the
very
virtual
phallic.
background, it's a little hard to see. So you got, like, now you can see it, a nice top to it, and it gives this twist down here at the bottom.
Yeah, I liked
With
that.
some of the nice skyscrapers that we're seeing these days.
So now you can put the smokiest scotch that you can find, decant it, and enjoy it at
But
your
wait, there's
leisure.
more, Vic. There's more.
Ah,
It's a matching set of 4 glasses with the same twisty
oh, look at
base
that.
on the
Look at
bottom.
that twist.
I can have 3 friends. In fact,
Yeah,
or I can have the 2 of you
absolutely.
and whoever's doing the back office. So come on down and have a drink.
Hey, listen, don't thank us. Thank Fidelity Private Shares. We are happy to be the messengers on this front. Andrew, honestly, we could probably spend 10 more hours with you, but Bree's got a Final Four game, or not a Final Four game, sorry.
I got to head over to March Madness. So
March Madness to get to at Chase Center. And I just want to thank you for being on the show. And,
Thank you for having me. This was great.
you get the last toast out. So toast.
Yes.
You get to toast to whomever you'd like. And
Sorry, I got to pour
then,
more.
Okay. If I toast somebody, everyone else is going to be pissed. So I'm going to tell you my favorite Irish toast ever. You ready?
Yes.
May you die and go to heaven a half hour before the devil knows you're dead.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Drinks with a VC. We are so grateful for our listener support. Feel free to reach out and add any of your questions to the comment section. If you have an idea for a guest or have some feedback, reach out to us on LinkedIn.
As always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.